Good morning and welcome into another edition of Let's Bet It. I'm Alex Glaze. He's Jared Smith. Jared, an early morning after a late night of hoops, another late night of hoops. The Warriors, they're back. They're back. I mean, what was your big takeaway from that game? Because my big takeaway was just that the Warriors are back. I'm not sure if they're here to stay, but what a great game. What an exciting game. Klay Thompson, Steph Curry doing what they do. Looney grabbing 22 rebounds, a double-double from Draymond. And they put the Grizzlies away. A fun Grizzlies team, a young Grizzlies team that will certainly be a contender for many years to come.
Yeah, Grizzlies are a tough-nosed team, and they proved it without their best player, hanging, really, for I think they played 3 games without Ja in the series, maybe 4, but definitely 3. And they were in all those games. They won one of the games in blowout fashion, and they were in the game last night until the fourth quarter when Golden State made that run. And that's what championship teams do, which is fourth quarter, closeout game, at home, make the run, move on, punch the ticket. And we talked about this with Scal earlier in the week. Shout out, Brian. Amazing job with his props last night. He went 2-1 with the Boston-Milwaukee game, and he went 1-0. Just demolished that Draymond Green prop. It was basically a cover city at halftime. But when you look at what the Warriors are, and a little bit younger, a little bit less tread on the tires than a Phoenix Suns team with a Chris Paul and a Jay Crowder and guys that, maybe need a little more rest. Well, now Golden State gets the extra rest, and Phoenix has to play Dallas on Sunday in Game 7. I don't know when the West Final would begin. I don't know if it's the day after, 2 days after, but I do think Golden State's in a really advantageous position heading into the Western Conference Final.
Absolutely. Like Klay Thompson said after the game, they're just going to put their feet up and kind of sit back and enjoy these next couple of days here. But, I mean, aside from, these basketball playoffs, which have been great, Stanley Cup playoffs been incredible as well. I mean, our Ice Cats finished off the Caps last night.
Big win last night.
Big win for the Ice Cats last night, but then we got the Rangers and the Stars forcing Game 7. So we have Game 7s that we're going to definitely talk about today, and we've got some more on tap for tomorrow. So just a great – the playoffs just been great all around.
Yeah, and don't forget, we've got the pick because of the nature of the postseason where we don't know when, if necessary – be sure you're refreshing Pickswise.com. Be sure you're on the app, because when we do get one of these 3-star plays, which, by the way, teaser, the 3-star play on Pickswise.com is we're all in simpatico. Maybe it's like a Friday the 13th post seance we're all going to have with one of our teams tonight that we hope gets across the finish line in a Game 7, and we'll definitely have. But download the app, be on Pickswise.com. It comes, we don't know where the games are coming. We might have a Game 7, might be so be sure you're refreshing and staying up to date, because you don't want to miss anything, because our guys do their best work this time of year usually.
Man, it's almost like you did half the pitch that I was about to get before I got into the show here. Make sure you subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channel. Let us know in the comments. I'm definitely keeping an eye on the chat on YouTube. I believe we are also streaming on Twitter right now as well, so that's a ton of fun. And download the app, available in the Apple App Store and in Google Play. Big show today, big card. We're going to talk some Major League Baseball, batter up. Of course, we do that every day, talk some NRFIs and YRFIs. NBA Morning Radar. We're going to bring in Jonathan Tobel to talk some NBA and get ready for tomorrow's slate of games. Then we're going to take it to the ice and finish things off with our plays of the day. So without further ado, Jared, let's bet it. And let's start with batter up. Let's start with some baseball here. YRFIs went 8-7 yesterday, 242 to 245 for the season. So kind of 50-50 there. The Orioles and the Tigers playing each other in a little weekend series here have only scored 3 times in the first inning all season. But their NRFI's a little juicy there. So I believe we were looking at that pre-show. Not gonna take any bites out of that just yet. But you have a YRFI play that you are eyeing today. You love the plus money YRFIs.
I do, and I do have one today. And just to echo some of the stats and the numbers that we're seeing, it is crazy. Baltimore and Detroit, I mean, it's like a black hole of first inning runs. So to put it all in perspective, the average run scoring rate in the first inning this season in Major League Baseball is 27.7%. That is in line, actually, with one of the threads that one of the sharp gamblers, Captain Jack Andrews, put out when the whole YRFI-NRFI debate was firing up last month. He put out a thread that said over the last 4 years, the first inning run scoring rate is about 29% in baseball. So again, this year, down slightly, but not significant enough to where we're going to make any claims about it. Absolutely right on pace with what we've seen over the last 4 seasons. So I feel comfortable based on the numbers that we're seeing this year. Plus money YRFIs are the way to go. So here you go. Cincinnati and Pittsburgh plus 110 over at the Westgate. This is Luis Castillo making just his second start of the year against Zach Thompson, who's 2-2 to the NRFI this year, was 7-7 last year. So again, basically a coin flip. Castillo, one of the better pitchers in baseball, actually, in terms of his stuff, but he can be a little erratic sometimes. In fact, last year he was 21-12 to the NRFI, which is about 60%. So that's pretty low considering the average run scoring rate in baseball is about 30%. So you would expect a starting pitcher, especially that good starting pitcher, to be at a 70% NRFI rate, but Castillo was below that last year. Pittsburgh scored yesterday. They're 4-4 in the YRFI category over the last 8 games. Cincinnati has been kind of a buy low team. You know, they were brutal the first month. They've kind of percolated a bit lately. They're 6-4 to the YRFI in their last 10 games. During that stretch, they've scored 5 times and conceded 4 times. So they're flying runs on both sides of the board there. So I'll take a shot, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. We hit this yesterday at plus 115. A little bit better of a pitching matchup today, which is why I think it's plus 110, Castillo, Thompson, but we'll try the YRFI again at PNC Park in Pittsburgh.
I like that. You got any other baseball plays you're looking at?
Yes. Strikeout props to the unders. I was bragging about how great I was doing unders this year, and then I've lost like 3 in a row. That's usually what happens.
Where do you find these strikeout props so early in the morning? I like a good strikeout prop too. I can't find them anywhere in the morning.
FanDuel. Now, to be fair,
FanDuel has
New Jersey
alt line.
It's different. It's different in Jersey. No, it exists. You have to go to player strikeouts, and it exists. But yes, the alt lines also exist. But you got to do a little digging. It's there. If you go down to player strikeouts, they do exist. I'm going to take Jordan Montgomery under 5.5, laying 48 cents at FanDuel. He's projected for 3.8. This is an easy bet. He stayed under 4.5 or 5.5 in all 6 starts. He has not recorded 6 strikeouts in a start all season. That includes 2 starts against the Orioles, shit lineup, 1 start against the Tigers, another shit lineup. We just talked about those 2 lineups. His K rate in baseball this year is 38th percentile amongst starting pitchers, which is his lowest K rate since 2018. So again, I think he's retooling himself a little bit. He's pitching more to contact this year. He's using his sinker a lot more. His Z contact percentage, which is a Fangraphs term for the contact percentage with pitches inside the zone, is the highest of his career. Translation, he's hitting the zone a lot more, and he's getting more contact in the zone, and he's getting a lot more ground ball outs with the sinkers. And the White Sox, they crushed lefties this year, 3rd in WRC plus and the 10th lowest K rate. And the final nail in this coffin for the handicap, the Yankees have a very rested bullpen. Garrett Cole pitched into the 7th yesterday, and they only used 1 other reliever. So if Montgomery runs into trouble, I don't think Aaron Boone's going to hesitate to bring in the bullpen early. I'll also give you Zach Gallen over 17.5 outs. I moved this line with a 25% profit boost. It was minus 175, which is too juicy for me, but I got it down to minus 141, which is a little bit more palatable. Man, I love Zach Gallen. I think he's a Cy Young candidate. He's gone at least 6 innings in 3 straight starts, and he's coming off a 7 scoreless inning outing against the Rockies. He hasn't issued a walk in 2 consecutive starts. And when we're talking about betting an outs prop instead of a strikeout prop, if your walk rate's really down, you're getting a lot of contact. I like the outs because you're going to mow through hitters a lot quicker. Chicago, the Cubs just have a brutal lineup. 5th lowest WRC plus and the 7th lowest walk rate in the last 7 days. So they're not generating a lot of long counts, and they're not scoring a lot of runs. And I love fading this Cubs lineup. We did it last week with Walker Buehler. I'll do it again today. Zach Gallen over 17.5 outs.
Love it. All right, I'm looking at a baseball play too. And I'm just looking at this because I think I like the value more than I probably like the play. But Padres money line, plus 120. Feels like the wrong team's kind of favored in this one. It's not just because the Padres just beat up on the Braves last night. uh, this is a Braves team. I mean, by and large, they've struggled at the plate. For as good as that lineup is, they've struggled at the plate this season. They've really struggled against left-handed pitchers. And Chamonix is on the bump today for the Padres. In 22 games, the Braves have the 6th most strikeouts and are have a bottom 10 average against lefties. And the Padres have just been a really good, probably great road team this season, 11-5 on the road so far this year. It just feels like a great value spot for them, even coming off that win at plus 120. I feel like they're getting a little bit disrespected there, so I like the price. So that's probably my favorite baseball play on the board today. I'm gonna have to go back and look at some strikeout props because I couldn't find any. I saw the alt lines on FanDuel. Some games,
it's tough. They make them hard to find. It's a process.
Not, and they're not consistent. They're not for like some games are there, some games
You're right.
not there.
You're right. And also, for example, there's double headers today. Angels. I was looking at the Angels Athletics YRFI, but then I was like, it's the second game of the doubleheader that I like. And I don't know. It's like weird because it's like not like a real YRFI if it's the second game of a doubleheader. You know, they've already played 9 innings and then they go back in and then they come back out. It's like, so I tend to stay away from the games where the lines are funky in baseball because of weird circumstances, doubleheaders, things like that. So yeah, you got to do some digging. I spend honestly, I'm up like 6 a.m. usually looking at baseball stuff early because it's hard, man. The board is tough to scan in baseball. You have to be very patient because the numbers matter because the volume of the games. So instead of like the NBA where it's like there's 2 games, of course we're going to bet one of them. If I'm like even slightly on the fence with a baseball bet, I will just brush it aside because there's so many games. You have to be really strong and firm with your handicaps, I think, on a daily basis.
I'm also down on Charlie Morton. Morton, I mean, he's looked all right in his last outing. He's got to show me something. He hasn't looked great so far this year, so he's got to put together good back-to-back starts before I can be a believer in him. All right, let's switch gears and talk some NBA, and let's bring in our friend Jonathan Von Tobel, NBA analyst and host of the Hardwood Handicappers podcast. Are we back? Are we good? JVT? Oh, we're good. There we go.
What's up, guys?
Long pause there. Thought we might have lost some connection there. How we feeling after another night of great basketball? But it feels like it's just a roller coaster with these series. Yeah. You know, you kind of got to ride the waves a little bit.
Well, and that's the night, right? Like those have been the series that have kind of been a little bit more competitive. Like the series between Dallas and Phoenix has been kind of competitive, but the results have been a little bit lopsided. So you got 2 really good games yesterday. And what I liked about yesterday too was especially like the game between Milwaukee and Boston. You know, I'm big on analytics and numbers. I talk to you guys a lot about those sort of things. You know, sometimes dudes just show up and they don't want to lose games. And like Jason Tatum and Giannis Antetokounmpo last night were freaking awesome. And I think that's what you really like about like the NBA at times. When superstars take over, those games can be a ton of fun. You got that last night.
Oh, John, I hope you got some sleep, man, because, you know, today we get a day off. So enjoy your rest. No games tonight. Is that does that break your rhythm in any sense? Like, do you think, especially because they're 2-game 7s, do you like having more prep time? Would you rather just let her rip and fire? And how's your mindset heading into what is going to be a very exciting Sunday night?
Yeah, personally, I like these days, you know, in terms of days off. As somebody who has handicapped the NBA since, October 19th, all the way up until this point right now, it has had a lot of bad nights and a lot of good nights. It is nice to kind of unwind a little bit, you know what I mean? Still do a lot, still do some prep and look at stuff from a player prop standpoint. You get a little bit more involved there when you have some time. But on a day like this, it is cool to sit back and unwind for a second and get ready for 2 really intense days tomorrow. So no, it doesn't really break my rhythm a bunch. And you kind of view it too as, these series do get days off, right? You don't necessarily do, but the series do get days off. So it's kind of still within the same flow.
All right, let's get into tomorrow's games. Bucks at Boston. Celtics 5-point favorites in this game. I'm looking at this and I think right now I'm leaning Bucks and the points, right? Just feels like too many points for a team that has won in Boston twice already in this series. And in those two games, the Celtics were favored by 5 points in game one and 4.5 in that second game. So maybe Bucks sprinkle a little bit on the money line, plus 172 right now on FanDuel is worth it as well. But I'm leaning Bucks and the points right now. I haven't looked at any props, but right now that's probably my favorite play for that game. What are your thoughts on that, JVT?
So my first initial thought is that, one, from a number standpoint, that this is right where I make it. I just made it over 4.5, so we're right in step, like lock and step with where it should be. If we're talking about a home court being worth that 3, that gets you to about this point right now. So I think it's maybe a scoosh a little high, but like nothing in terms of value, I think, for me to play it in either way. But I'll say this, like if I'm picking a side, I do think it's going to be Boston for me to win this game and to move on. Boston has been, and throughout this entire series, the more consistent offensive team. Boston's the team that's got 3 games in which they have had an offensive rating of 116 or better, not the Milwaukee Bucks. Boston's the team that has multiple games now which they have shot from three-point range an extremely good clip. The Milwaukee Bucks have not. The Celtics have been a really consistent force on the defensive end of the floor throughout this entire series. And you look back at some of these losses. I mean, go back to their last loss in Boston that you mentioned. I mean, that's more about execution on Boston's end than anything else. And they've had those problems too. And that was kind of the worrying part about it, right? That was why you got to see them kind of come through in clutch time last night. But remember the regular season, Boston was 26th in net rating in clutch time. They were outscored by 9.5 points per 100 possessions. It was a reason why they got off to the slow start. They just started blowing out teams. They didn't have to worry about it because none of those games came down to within 5 points or 5 minutes. So you kind of saw those demons come back. But what you really liked about last night is when the Bucks closed that back to 9, and you even heard Tatum say it in the post game, he's like, we didn't want that to happen again. And so they put the foot down. Tatum had the ball in his hands, not Marcus Smart, and they went and closed him out. I just think you've seen some more consistent positives for Boston as the team, as opposed to Milwaukee, which has really relied on Giannis since about game 3 to carry every single bit of this offensive load. And if he's not scoring 40, they don't have a chance. And so I think when I look at Boston overall, they've been the more consistent unit offensively. They've been the more consistent unit defensively. I like them to move on here. And so I would pick them to win. And from a number standpoint, it's right where I make it.
Yeah, it's pretty clear to me. I think Boston's going to win this game. It just is a matter of by how much. And you could tell, so the Bucks lost Middleton about midway through the Bulls series. And the short term, they were able to get by. Grayson Allen had some good games. But now it's the long haul. They've played 6 games against a really good defensive team. And you can see the drop-off in consistency from Middleton to every other shooter, role player, non-player not named Giannis on this Bucks team. Drew Holiday hasn't really excelled like he did in last postseason. And when I look at the net ratings during this series, JVT, Boston's a plus 5.5, Milwaukee's a minus 5.5. The line's right at 5. That kind of makes, and I know that the net rating has nothing to do with the betting spread, but when you talk about just the consistency and what we've seen on both ends of the floor from Boston, they're the better team right now, and better teams should win at home, barring some kind of explosive performance from Milwaukee shooters. That's where I see it. Does that make sense to you in terms of, all right, this is a Boston win, but maybe the spread is right on, so we just kind of look for other ways to play it, maybe a Tatum prop or maybe a prop in some way that correlates with Boston winning the game?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because even when you're talking about, let's go back to the Milwaukee's last win, right, in Game 5. Drew Holiday, we're going to remember what Drew Holiday did defensively. A brilliant help defense, right? Defensive play where he blocks Marcus Smart. Another brilliant play in which he steals the ball from Marcus Smart down the stretch. Or remember a big 3 from him down the stretch too. We're not going to remember they went 9-24 in that game and was wildly inefficient from the floor. And you look around in this game yesterday, Giannis was just begging for some sort of help outside of himself to take the load offensively. And I think that to me is, you mentioned it, and it's the key word here, it's team, right? Boston is the better team at this point. Giannis is the best player, but Boston is the better team. They are getting more even contributions from others. And yesterday, yes, they got 40 points from Jason Tatum. Every once in a while, you need that from your superstar. Giannis has been doing it every single one of these games, and they have needed every single point that he has put out there. So sure, is there a nuclear Giannis performance in here in which he leads them to a victory? Absolutely. We've seen it before. But to me, if you're talking about what is a more probable outcome here, the team that has performed a little bit more even-keeled, even yesterday, had an offensive rating of 115. So now if you want to lower that bar a little bit, that's 4 games in this series which have had an offensive rating of 115 or better. To me, it makes more sense to look in the direction of the Boston Celtics.
Okay, I like that. And let's move on to the second game here. this Mavs Suns game, which I can't figure out this Suns team to save my life. Is it just as simple as Suns on the road, completely different team than Suns at home, just to back the Suns at home? Is it as simple as that? Because that feels almost too simple.
I think it is to a certain extent, but I would focus on one thing here with the Phoenix Suns and what's happened to them up to this point. Chris Paul over the last 4 games has not been good. And it's not Chris Paul himself, like, he's not performing well, he's not a superstar, he's not stepping up. The Dallas Mavericks have a 3-guard rotation that is so good defensively, they can throw at him in any single possession. It is Reggie Bullock, it is Dorian Finney-Smith, and Frank Ntilikina is getting out there too and guarding Chris Paul at times. And that has really bothered Chris Paul. Over the last 4 games, Chris Paul is averaging 9.2 points per game, and he is turning the ball over 4 times, I think it's like 4.5 times per game, and he's only getting up about 7 to 9 shots a game. Like they're just kind of putting them in hell at this point. And to me, like when you watch it, it has its ripple effects throughout this entire Suns offense. And it's no surprise that over this 4 games, since he's performed very well, the Suns are 1-3 straight up and against the spread in this series because of that. So I think part of it is going on the road, right? The cliche that role players play a little bit better at home as opposed on the road. This series, the Miami series, we saw that really personified, right? Like those home teams were undefeated in that series until the Miami Heat won that game in Philly. And in this series, home teams are undefeated. But I think when you look at what has happened with Phoenix offensively, part of it's on the road, but part of it is Dallas deserves a ton of credit for their defensive game plan and what they've been able to do to Chris Paul, because that has really bothered the Suns.
And those Mavs shooters too. They're coming alive too. I mean, we kind of had that one game where I believe they went 8 for 32, but that's kind of the anomaly. They're putting up a ton of threes. They're making a ton of threes, and they have a lot of guys on the floor at the same time that can cause problems from beyond the arc too. I think that's another issue that the Suns have really struggled to deal with, because they don't have the same level of shooters. Like Devin Booker is great, but they don't have those guys out there that can keep up with that.
Yeah, and really quickly, too, going back to the Chris Paul point, because I was pulling up my doc here. Yeah, so turnovers by game. How about this for the Phoenix Suns? Game 2, 17. Game 3, 17. Game 4, 17. Game 5, they had 12. And then they had 22 in Game 6. Like, that's Dallas, man. Dallas has been all over them. Their turnover rate in this series would be dead last in the regular season if they averaged it. But your point about 3-point shooting, so this is one of my favorite little nuggets that I was digging up when I was looking through some of the tracking data, because the Mavs are kind of replicating what they've been doing against Utah. And it's what they've done all year long, right? It's just, let's play 4 or 5 out. Let's get dribble penetration when we get one-on-one matchups, and we'll kick it out to our guys. We'll force their rotations. If you look at what the Mavericks have done in this series, this has been brilliant. So the drive and kick opportunities, Dallas averaging 25.7 catch and shoot 3-point attempts. They are shooting 40.9% on those attempts. And it's also leading to wide open looks. In this series, the Mavericks, 24.6% of their 3-point attempts are considered wide open. That means defenders 6 feet or farther away, and they are shooting 41.7% on those attempts. And if you look at some of the shot quality numbers, Dallas has been the more consistent team, depending on how you weigh them. And I like shot quality numbers. Essentially, it gives you the quality of shots the team takes, what would they shoot or what would they score if they shot league average on those attempts. And if you look at it from that prism, well, Dallas actually should have won one game in Phoenix, and they should have covered another game in Phoenix. So now, all of a sudden, we're looking at this overall in the series, and I think you have really good evidence that the Suns haven't been able to contain their dribble penetration attack. They've been shooting the ball really well. They've been playing Chris Paul really effectively defensively. And if you get just a little bit of a correction when you go back on the road here, I think there's a really strong case to be made for the Suns. No, for the Dallas Mavericks to win this game and to cover and to move on to the Western Conference Finals. I really like what I've seen from Dallas in stretches of the series.
You stole my thunder, JVT. I was going to give you the hot take that Dallas is going to win this game tomorrow night. Here are the ways that I would, first of all, just to echo the Chris Paul situation. While you were going back there, I was looking at his numbers this year. He averaged nearly 33 minutes this year. That's his highest minutes per game rate since the 2014-15 season with the Clippers. Again, last year he played in 20-something playoff games. This year, the playoff games continue to pile up where he's playing just intense, tough, brutal minutes for a 37-year-old to play. And he is relied upon to be the engine of that offense. Father Time is undefeated. And I'm not saying that he's tired or he's dogging it, but when you elongate this series and Dallas with the star that's much fresher in Luka Doncic, who has much less tread on the tires, continues to find his footing and the Dallas role players continue to feel comfortable, and then you see diminishing returns from the star player of the Phoenix Suns, it really does push me to Dallas might be the better suited team to win this Game 7. In a long series that's been back and forth, I think Dallas is the fresher team with fresher legs. Now Phoenix gets an extra night off. Does that extra day off between games give the Suns maybe a slight edge because of the rest factor?
Well, I think it helps for sure, especially when you're talking about Paul and what he's gone through. And even so, Zach Lowe, who works for ESPN, had a great stat on this podcast the other day, which was if you look at the numbers for Chris Paul as the screener defender, right, where he's just brought over and worked in some of these sets, they're giving him a taste of his own medicine. Because if you remember that Game 2 matchup, Doncic, it was the career high in terms of when he was the screening defender, when they just brought him over possession after possession in the second half, and they went after him, and they won that game in Phoenix. For Chris Paul, this is from Zach Lowe's podcast, the 3 games in which he has been the most targeted, essentially, it's been the last 3 games in this series. They've been going after him in this series as well on the other end of the floor. So not only are you throwing defensive pieces at him that can just swallow him up, they're bigger, they're a little bit stronger at that point, they're also just working him on the other end of the floor too. So to your point, yes, I think the extra day here does help a guy like Chris Paul, because you've been getting run through the mill here. This has been a series that has been every other day since it has started. So the extra day of rest, I think definitely, if you're chalking it up at which side it gives a bigger advantage to, I think it's absolutely Phoenix, because their guy Chris Paul really needs it.
Awesome. Before we get you out of here, your favorite plays as we get ready for tomorrow's games. Do you have anything locked in? Do you have any props? Do you have any sides? What are you on right now?
So I haven't bet anything yet because I want to see what the market does with this Dallas-Phoenix game. Yep. I'm going to bet Dallas. But I just want to see. So if we go back the last few games, the market has they've really supported the Phoenix Suns. Even before the series started, there were multiple books reporting highest liability from a conference semifinal standpoint series price was the Phoenix Suns. You go to some of the games in the series, right? Game 4, for example, in Dallas, where the Suns get all the way up to a 3-point favorite in that game. We saw them close 7 multiple times at home against Dallas in this series too. So I'm going to sit back and see what the market does here. I am going to bet Dallas. I just want to see what number I get. Am I going to get 6.5? Am I going to get 7? When the market starts to get its hands on this thing when we get closer to game time. So that's going to be at the top of the list for me in terms of a side or a play or anything like that. Dallas is going to be the side.
Love it. Love it. Jonathan Von Tobel, NBA analyst, host of the Hardwood Handicappers podcast. Always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Always good to talk to you guys. Thank you.
All right, Jared, let's switch gears and talk some hockey, talk some puck, because we got 3 Game 7s today. 3 Game 7s, and we get 2 tomorrow. But let's digest these 3 that we have today. Which one would you like to start with? Where do you want to start?
Well, let's go over the OT challenge real quick, because for the 4th time in the last 5 nights, we have had profits. And I know we've got a big hole to climb out of from earlier in the postseason, but I've noticed the games tightening up over the last few nights. A lot more 1 and 2s on the average margin of victories instead of the 3s, 4s, and 5s, which is what we saw earlier in the postseason. And I will say, I'll give you the numbers right here. The average margin of victory this postseason, 2.87 so far in the first round. Last year in the first round, it was 2.09. And we've seen a big gap in the discrepancy with games that have gone to overtime and games that haven't. 35.5% hit rate last year in the first round, just 13% this year. Is this going to be profitable at the end of the postseason? Probably not. But that's why we're only betting it for 0.1 units, and we are going to continue to track it, because I do think it gives us a glimpse into the overarching trends that are going on within each series, within each round, and then, of course, the entire cake, the full cake of the entire playoff. So the games are tightening up, and I think less puck lines, more money lines, and more unders, even though it's really tough to bet unders in the playoffs because these teams are pulling the goalies really, really fast. But let's start, I think we should start with the Canes Bruins series, because that's the first game on the board today. But I don't want to give too much away, wink, wink, because we're going to maybe talk about it a little bit later. So how about I lead with this, and you can give me your overall thoughts on what you've seen. The overs went 3-0 last night. In the playoffs so far, we've had 46 games, 31 overs. That is a 67% hit rate. If you woke up every day and just blind bet $100 on every over in this NHL postseason, you'd be up 1,300 bones plus some change in the first 2 weeks, basically. And if we're talking specifically Game 7 handicaps tonight, the home teams, 58% winning percentage, 107 and 77, all time in NHL playoff Game 7s. And how about this? Last year, the home teams went 2-1. But what that tells me is we only had 3 Game 7s last year, the whole playoffs. We have 3 tonight. And then
3 tonight and then 2 more tomorrow.
So talk about just how back and forth a lot of these series have been. Just tight as tight can be.
It's not even that they've been back and forth. It has just been you get domination at home for one team, and then they go on the road and they get dominated. Then they come back home. It's just been up and down and up and down. No real rhyme or reason. Just been a complete bloodbath on both sides. And that's kind of what this Canes Bruins series has been, right? Home teams dominated this whole series, won every game in this series. And not just, I believe, have they covered the puck line in every game too?
I think there was one game that was a 1-goal margin.
Was there one game? Okay. Okay.
But the margin of victory, Game 4 was 3 goals. Game 5 was 4 goals. Game 6 was 3 goals. Game 1 was 4 goals. Game 2, no, actually, the puck line is hit in every single game because the games have all been 3, 4 goals, 2 goals or more. So the shortest margin of victory in this series was Game 3, 2 goals. Everything else has been 3 or 4. It's wild. Absolutely.
So we're looking here at this Canes Bruins game on the puck line. The Canes laying 1.5 plus 180. Plus 180 here.
I got plus 190. I got plus 190 over at the
plus 190. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, shop around the numbers. You can find different numbers in different shops. So I'll save the majority.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about that game later. We're going to talk more about that game later.
The other game, Tampa Bay Toronto, I think is fascinating because of the stats coming into it. So the Lightning last game, they won their 17th consecutive playoff game off of a loss. Obviously, this game is not off of a loss, so that trend is meaningless tonight. But the Leafs have lost 8 straight games, closeout games in a series, in any series over their last however many years in the playoffs. They just cannot get across the finish line. They can get right there, but I could not imagine betting Toronto tonight. I can't. I wouldn't be able to get to the window on Toronto. I've got my Lightning series bet at plus 110, and I feel great about that because the money line tonight for Tampa Bay is plus 105. So I get a little bit of a discount there, and I'm just sticking with my series bet on Tampa Bay because the Leafs they might go in the graveyard tonight if they don't win this game at home. If they
Leafs?
can't,
no. Well, listen, I don't know how your graveyard operates here. But my it takes more than just one infraction to put you in the graveyard.
The 3-strike
we do have an upgrade. While we're doing this, hold on. I'll update my graveyard for the people out there who care.
Yeah, we got the graveyard. We got a text message from Alex a couple days ago with the updated graveyard.
So Will Wade's in there. We all know why Will Wade is in there. Everyone that's been following this show for any amount of time. Dylan Bundy is in there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Bundy's in there. He hurt me. Okay, I say it takes more than one infraction. That was one infraction by Dylan Bundy. But that one really hurt me.
That one really hurt, huh?
And then the Sixers, just the whole Sixers organization in the graveyard. So those are the only. We're very selective about who's in there. But we do have some occupants.
What if Will Wade ever became the coach of the 76ers? Would that make your head explode?
No, because I would have no thoughts.
It would reduce the graveyard by one. It would be the same.
No. I wouldn't. No, you get your own. You get your own. Your own slate. Yeah, your own slate.
Your own plot of land in the Alex Clay sports betting graveyard.
That's funny. I mean, obviously, the storyline is going to be the Leafs in Game 7s, and can they overcome it? Or what's going to happen? I think that's going to be a really exciting. I'm really looking forward to that one. What do you think about this?
How about TNT? Because this is something you either appreciate or hate if you were on either side of this. When the Leafs lost Game 6 in overtime, the first cutaway for TNT was like the Jurassic Park outdoor space with all the Leafs fans just looking absolutely miserable. And that was like the
sad fan cutaways. I love it. I love sad fan. The directors. I mean, that's a cruel director. That's a director that just. That's awesome. That's awesome stuff. I'm a big fan of crying kid cutaways.
Oh, terrible.
Love it.
Stealing
March
kids'
Madness,
candy.
the crying.
Oh yeah, the band
being
the band
sold. I love all of that. I love the tears. Love the tears. Oh my God! Hold on, we got a comment in the chat here. Cal Ripken. Hold on. Okay. I need to address this because Cal Ripken is not in the sports graveyard. I don't. You have to actually do something to me and my wallet to end up in the sports graveyard. We don't hold any no personal vendettas will result in you being in the sports graveyard. Only if you hurt my pockets in a significant way will you end up in the graveyard. Which honestly, the way this past week has gone, maybe I should have a couple more occupants, but I think that's more about me than them. So, but that's why the Sixers are in there. The Sixers are in there because of the other day. But yeah, let's talk about this Oilers Kings game too, because I'm not gonna be honest with you. I haven't watched too much of this series to speak about it. It is late. You know, my bedtime is
you're early.
And when I'm staying up late, I'm watching the NBA. I don't do the multi-screen thing too late. Personal problem. My eyes late at night. I get headaches with too much light. So I try to limit the amount of screens I'm looking at. But your thoughts on that Oilers King series?
I would say this has been – so yesterday Scout came on the show. We were talking about Celtics Bucks, and he's like, I don't know who's going to win this game. It's been so schizo. Like, they've been all over the place. That's this series. So this is the one series that really hasn't held true to form. How about this? The road team is 4-2 in the first 6 games. 2 consecutive road wins. Both of the home wins, though, in this series – so the home team has won 2 games. They've both been by 4 goals or more, and they've both been via a shutout. Edmonton won 6-0 in Game 2. The Kings bounced back Game 4, won 4-0. Both instances where the home team won tied the series. So it was like a momentum, shift where the home team was behind in the series, and they had an emphatic win, and then they tied the series. So that makes this series very, very difficult to predict. If you want to make a bet on this game, the only bet I can even consider is taking a ton of plus money with the Kings, considering they've already won a game on Edmonton's home ice in this series. In fact, they've won 2 games on Edmonton's home ice in this series, and I just can't lay minus 220 for Edmonton in a Game 7, despite the fact that, as we said a little bit earlier, the home teams do have a 58% winning percentage in 184 all-time Game 7s. But that's still, 58% is still lower than minus 220, which is like a 66, 67% implied probability. So I would stay away from the Kings. I mean, on the Oilers on the money line. If you want to bet the Kings and take plus 180, I don't mind it either. But this has been a really tough series to predict. So I think it's probably better to stay away.
All right. Well, let's circle back and talk about the game that we're all on here. It's a 3-star play on the website, so that's what we're looking at here. It's your play of the day. It's my play of the day. We're on the Hurricanes. I'll let you go first.
I love it. Before I get to that, because usually we give out a play from the site, and since our play is
there's another 3-star play.
There isn't, but what there is, and maybe some of you are in the mood after the Kentucky Derby last weekend. There are several Belmont race picks from Martin Pennington, who has done an amazing job handicapping horse racing this year. So there's no NBA today. Baseball is kind of NHL is going to be good. But if you're in the mood to bet the ponies today, there's some very, very interesting picks. I might actually get involved with a few of these because I can watch Belmont here in New York. So I might. Martin Pennington has, again, done a really good job. And also Pete Flanagan, shout out, man. He's been asking in the chat about the Liverpool-Chelsea match. I don't have a bet on it. Our friends over at Racing Post who do a really good job covering soccer, they like Liverpool on the money line, the 3-way money line. So if you want to put a sprinkle on Liverpool, but this is the FA Cup final starting very soon. if you're interested in getting involved there. Liverpool, I would say, is the way to go.
All right. Well, so let's talk about this Canes game.
Yes. I'm on the money line for the Canes.
We're on the money. We're all on the money line. We're all on the money. Hurricanes to win.
Love it. So here's the only edge that I can see here is really just how good Carolina's been at home, not only in the postseason. We talked about all 6 games of this series has been won by the home team, but Carolina in their 3 home games, a 15-4 scoring margin. And also, if you take the entire regular season into account, they've allowed the fewest goals per game at home of any team in the NHL at just over 2. So they are an incredibly strong home team. The home team has won all 6 games of this series. If that trend bucks itself in Game 7, I will tip my cap. But Carolina laying just 35 cents, very fair price on the money line. I got it at MGM. I'm assuming it'll move towards Carolina because I'm seeing a lot of the handle on the Canes. But yeah, I think it's the safest play on the board tonight. Home team, Game 7. They've been better at home, and Boston, I think, is going to really struggle.
Completely agree with everything you just said. The only pause that I have when I'm looking at this game is just the Game 7 experience that this Boston team has, right? Like, I think Carolina's the better team. Sure. And they've obviously been dominant at home, like you said, 15-4 at home games, 15-4 goal scoring in home games in this series. Just Carolina's just been too good at home all season long to kind of go the other way in this one. This has been a really volatile series, but the one constant has just been the dominance of the home teams. The Bruins just 1-5 in their last 6 road games, and the Hurricanes undefeated in each of their last 5 home games. So I'm just going to roll with the Hurricanes as well in the money line. Don't want to sweat out any 3-way money lines. Don't want to worry about overtime. Just Hurricanes to win. And that is also a 3-star play on the website as well. So
I'm going to sprinkle a half a unit on the puck line too, because I think if they're ahead late, the empty net will be early enough. And we saw it yesterday with Dallas. We saw 2 games yesterday where the empty net goal hit the puck line, Dallas and New York. So plus 190, I think, if we think Carolina's going to be ahead in the 3rd period, I absolutely would take a plus 190 little half a unit sprinkle there on the puck line. So I think Carolina's the play today. I agree.
Do I get greedy and I have not done this. I've not bet on anytime goal scores so far in the postseason. I want to sprinkle a little bit on Brad Marchand to score a goal. Plus 170. Seems a little, it's 170.
Let me look. Hold on. Let me. I've got an interesting prop tool here that does help me with this.
Because I feel like if there is a guy for Boston that's going to show up in a game,
let's take a look at Marchand. So Marchand has scored in a few games of this series. So his implied odds for a goal, if you take into account his entire season, is plus 192. So unless you're getting 2-1, you're not getting a good line in terms of the entire regular season. Now, Alex is saying that in the playoffs, Marchand's got a little more experience, a little more moxie to him.
Absolutely.
Maybe that shaves 10 cents off the line. So maybe plus 180 is a fair price. Again, that's just an estimate of a goal scored for Marchand today. If you can find plus
186 on FanDuel. This is why you shop around. Plus 186 on FanDuel.
That seems like a fair price. And again, if this is a bet based off of gut, you might be willing to sacrifice a few cents of value. I don't see an issue with that. The one thing I would say is if we think Carolina is going to win the game, it's hard to root for Boston goals. But it's an interesting hedge.
But you know me, I just want to torture myself in some way watching this game. I don't want to sit and just be on one side. I want to try to thread
Carolina. It's enough torture in Game 7.
Let me put together like a little same game parlay just on opposite sides.
All right, let's see what that parlay would be. Let's see what that parlay would be.
A Marchand goal and a Carolina.
Ooh. And then Marchand to score a goal is – oh, they don't let you combine those on same game parlays. I mean, maybe some books would, but I wouldn't mind that actually, because that would be a uncorrelated parlay, and it would make
that's crazy. How did they not let you do that?
I don't know. Sometimes FanDuel with the same game parlays can be a little bit interesting. Hold on. All right, here we go. DraftKings, I think, is going to let me do it. Let me pull up DraftKings. So Carolina to win.
But they had plus 170. I'm gonna look at while you're doing that. I'm on BetMGM. So let's just try to
plus 475. It looks like that same game parlay. I mean, listen, that is very, very uncorrelated, and that's why you're getting a massive boost with the odds there. I mean, that's a juicy parlay for just 2 legs.
That's interesting.
The good news is you don't have to make the decision now. The game doesn't start for another 6 hours, so.
I know that is juicy. I'm gonna think about that. I do like a little sprinkle. I might not parlay him, but I might.
Nothing wrong with a little sprinkle. Throw a 0.1 quarter unit on it just to have fun.
Yeah.
But I think we are in a society now because of social media where we shame a lot of bets. Like, oh, that's not a good bet. If you're putting 0.1 or quarter unit sprinkle, don't let anybody shame you into thinking you're not making a good bet. We are in the entertainment business. Sports is entertainment. Be entertained when you're watching these games. Are you going to make a large wager on a bad bet? Of course not. That's asinine. But for sprinkles, have a blast. Do whatever makes you happy.
Live a little. Have a player prop or 2 in a game. Live a little. Root for a Draymond Green double-double. Come on. There we go.
There you go.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us. It happened last night. That'll do it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. He's Jared Smith. I'm Alex Glaze. We'll be both back to talk about some more Game 7s tomorrow. And hopefully we're going to enjoy this day, Jared. Good luck with your bets. Yeah.